happens when your business partner is also your life partner? Or when your partner at home doesn't quite understand the world of entrepreneurship? If you've ever found yourself navigating the blurred lines between business and personal life, this episode is for you. Whether you're a husband-wife duo running a business, partnered with a friend, or a solo entrepreneur with a non-entrepreneurial spouse at home, this conversation with relationship coach Kathy Rushing is packed with powerful insights you can't afford to miss. We explore how to set healthy boundaries, how to clarify your roles, and keep your relationship strong while scaling a business. She shares her CRAVE framework, communication tools that you can apply to both the boardroom and the bedroom. This is the episode every entrepreneur should hear because your success at work starts with connection at home. You're listening to the next episode of Main Street Success Stories podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Koch, a 25-year entrepreneur, and I created this podcast to share others' journeys to help you learn, grow, stay motivated, and know that you are not alone in this game called entrepreneurship. I invite you to listen in to relationship coach Kathy Rushing. Welcome to the Main Street Success Stories podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Koch. I've been a business owner for about 25 years, and now I'm a business coach. I actually turned my first business into a franchise and successfully sold it after owning and operating it for 20 years. I prioritize building a business while also building a life and love working with the creative entrepreneur. I mostly work with emerging business owners who desire growth. They are in their first 5 years of the journey and want a plan that's going to help them succeed for years to come. They're tired of not getting paid enough, feel stuck, and want more for their business and family. If you are a business owner and you're feeling stressed about how to attract more customers, you have a really good sales month, but then you look at your bank account and wonder where the money went. You look at your financial statements, but if you're being honest, you're not really sure what to do with the information. And you just tell yourself, if I work harder, it'll fix all my issues, only to feel exhausted and never see things improve. You're here because you want to build your business, but you also want to build a life that you love. I invite you to learn more about one of my 3 coaching programs designed to help you earn more and stress less. You can choose which option works best for you. Imagine this. You have a clear plan and momentum, and you're gaining more clients every week. Your revenue climbs by 20% or more. You save 5 hours a week because you know exactly where to show up. You're experiencing double-digit growth in your profits. People refer customers to your business because they understand exactly who you help and what you do. If this is you and you desire more, reach out, let's have a conversation, and you can click in the show notes below. Welcome, Kathy, to the show. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Hey, Jennifer. It is great to be here. I have been looking forward to it.
Well, I know when you and I met through LinkedIn, and you are located in Colorado, correct?
I am. Northern Colorado, where the calendar says springtime, but everything is brown.
Well, I'm in Michigan, where the calendar says spring, and we had snow this morning. So,
oh, my goodness. Yeah. Same here, anyway, night before last.
But that's what I love about LinkedIn is the ability to meet people outside of our area. And we love to travel to Colorado. So hopefully you and I at some point can meet in person.
That would be so awesome.
So today your business is Lodestar Relationship. You're a relationship coach. And I'm really excited to dive into all your wisdom. But before you got to Lodestar, give us a little, the quick version of your story. Because I know you and your husband were entrepreneurs as well, correct?
We are. We are different types of entrepreneurs. I am, and always have been, more of a solo entrepreneur. I just knew that I didn't want to work for anybody else. I didn't have the word entrepreneur in my vocabulary when we married in 1980. Your listeners can do the math. That's 45 years ago. So,
well, congratulations, because that's something to celebrate.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so it's been a long journey. I began as a marriage and family therapist. I was licensed first in California, and then we moved to Texas, where I transferred my license and worked in a couple of different settings, had a private practice for about 10 years, and then I don't know, I lose track of how many years ago it was. I used to say it was a couple of years ago, and then I looked at the calendar. It was like, no, it was more like 10 years ago that I closed my private practice to do some business coaching. I thought, I want to dabble in maybe family businesses. That intrigued me. At the time that I closed my practice, my husband, Mark, he had started a business called All's Care, ALZCARE, in 1998. It was an assisted living business that took care of people with Alzheimer's and other dementias. So that business had been going for some time and it was growing. And what I ended up doing was working with our hiring process. And I got certified in some different assessments, one of which is the DISC. And I use that a lot now with couples because I find it such an interesting tool for quickly getting some very helpful information about how each of you are wired. And when one is an entrepreneur, it can quickly short circuit the relationship. So did the business coaching for a few years, and then we were traveling a little more, bought a second home in Colorado, and then found ourselves in the pandemic kind of full-time up in Granby, which is a mountain community that we loved, but it felt pretty isolated, and two of our kids are here in Fort Collins. And so we started the process of, looking for and buying a home here in Fort Collins. So we've been here for 4 years now, and we ended up losing that Alzheimer's business in the pandemic. The pandemic was really, really rough on assisted living businesses.
Oh, yeah.
And 22-year business, we had exceeded all of the statistics of how long businesses survive. And so the last 3 years have been pretty life-changing in many ways. We have worked hard at resilience, and, we're still standing. But that is some of what prompted me to launch Lodestar Relationship Coaching. And so as a coach, I can work with individuals or couples virtually anywhere. Whereas when you're licensed, you're limited to that, whatever state you're licensed in.
Okay.
So.
Wow, what a powerful entrepreneurial journey story you have. And, you're not alone with the pandemic. There was just some businesses, no matter how successful you were, no matter how, savvy you are, there were just some businesses that could not weather what was thrown at them during the pandemic.
Literally shut down by the government for months. And so when you can't admit people and people are dying, which, we would lose people regularly because they don't ever leave when they check in. They are coming there. We provided end-of-life care. And so, we were shut down, and we took all the government aid that was offered. We shoveled in. We had a great partner, shoveled in money till there was no more to shovel, know, and that's what, that's where we got to the point of just making the excruciating decision because and had our marriage, had we not focused on and really built a strong foundation in those 40 plus years, I think a lot of marriages would not have weathered that storm. And so I'm very grateful that, like I said, we are still, we have each other's back, and we have not worked in the business together. But with All's Care especially, we talked about it all the time, and he values my input. So, yeah.
Well, you're learning to thrive in a different way.
Very much so, yep.
So one of the reasons I really wanted to talk with you today is, I'm a business coach, and I work with the business owners, and I work with a couple of husband-wife duos where they're both actively working in the same business, but also work with people that have business partnerships. And then the other dynamic that you touched on, where one of the partners is an entrepreneur and the other one isn't. So we've got three completely different partnerships here. And I really wanted to just dive into some of your wisdom and your tools and your best practices on helping these people in these situations kind of navigate that. So let's start with the husband-wife duo, shall we?
Sure.
So what I love about working with the husband-wife duo is, they're very passionate about their businesses. They're also very dedicated to growing their businesses because that's their only source of income for their family.
Right.
But at times, as their business coach, sometimes I feel like I should have a degree in marriage therapy. and not that they're bringing me all their baggage, but it is an interesting dynamic. And I think the biggest factor is really probably what I see from the outside non-therapist lens is trust that whatever lane or role they're each taking, that the other partner is going to trust it happens and not try to control the way they do it. Mm-hmm. And also probably the bigger one is boundaries. How do we as a husband-wife duo build a business, build a family where the only thing we're not talking about is our business?
Yeah. How much time do we have?
You mentioned we're not going to solve this in 30 minutes. But,
I know.
I would just love to hear your take on that.
Yeah. Well, and my observation, again, Mark and I did not work in the business. We did for a very short time, and we realized that was not a good place for us to be. So I think the challenge when they are both working in the business, especially if it is a very small business, as in maybe they're the only 2 employees or maybe there's 1 or 2 others, is that while there are many roles that have to be filled in any business, there are many seats, right? And I don't know if you're familiar or your listeners are familiar with EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System. Fantastic.
Yes.
Book that has taken, probably 100 business books and distilled it into, yes, this makes so much sense, right? So they kind of outline the different seats. Well, the challenge when you're a husband-wife duo is you might be in a seat you don't want, that you are not gifted for, or you may be wearing 3 or 4 hats. And so, I had a couple 2 years ago. They were actually the first couple I had when I launched this business. And what struck me was they really couldn't settle on those lanes. As you said, the lanes are the seats. So I think it begins with clarity about what are the seats that must be covered in order for this business, for us to take care of business. You've got to have someone that's doing accounting, bookkeeping, billing, sales, marketing. Someone has to be giving direction. You can't have a 2-headed monster. And I think the couples that succeed in this are couples that can be fluid with the seasons of life. I did an interview with Ben and Liz Bohannon a couple of years ago. I just adore them. They founded Seiko, SSEKO, which was I'm trying to think how they called it. They partnered with women in Africa to be able to provide jobs. So they made these sandals and leather goods. But they did this as a husband-wife team for a long time. They since have merged with another Noonday, I think. Anyway, on that, they now have 3 little boys. And they talked about how they would review their roles I don't know that they had a regular, maybe it was every 3 months, maybe it was every 6 months. But they would look at the roles, especially if someone's in a role they don't really want, but somebody has to do it. So maybe they would swap those roles. Or maybe Liz had just had one of their little baby boys and she's not as available. So he took on more things. So I just loved their example of what a healthy partnership looks like in terms of, again, being fluid and not fixed. I think the more rigid we are, the more conflict there is. And if there is anything we need as entrepreneurs, it is resilience. And some of that resilience means being able to adapt and negotiate. So boundaries, knowing who is in what role, wearing what hat, And then there are boundaries around your time, and especially when couples work from home. I met with a couple recently who work out of the same office. So
Yeah.
my husband and I tried that for a very short time years ago. And he's a very loud talker. And I'm like, I can't hear what I'm trying to maybe do mental work.
Right.
But this couple, they have a little one that was not yet 2, and she's pregnant with their second, and they're working from their home in the same office. And so that's the very thing we talked about, was getting very clear about boundaries. Like, how do we set up the day, communicating what we need, and asking for what we need, and how can I support you? Because otherwise it's just this massive blob of, work that spills over into home spills over into work. And so even if it's just, okay, at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or whatever time you agree on, we close the office door, and then you have some guidelines around, we don't talk about business tonight.
Right.
If you need to continue talking about it, then we set a time to do that. And it's not date night. Date night is not a business meeting.
And so it's almost like, in a sense, you really kind of need to treat your spousal partner in business like you would treat a business partner that you're not related to.
Yes.
I think sometimes we're just a little too comfortable with each other. We know each other's, tick points and little habits and nuances. And it's probably could be very easy to bleed into, I am not business partner right now, I'm wife.
Yes.
And, how do we, so we really need to kind of separate ourselves during the business hours, which sounds like it really comes down to being clear, very clear on those roles. But like you said, being willing to adapt, because, like we know, business changes day to day.
Right. Yeah. I put together, I sent it to you, so hopefully it will be in the show notes, but I put together a template that couples can use, all couples, not even just, they don't have to be working together or entrepreneurs. It's a 30-minute weekly check-in. But the other thing that I came up with is a 5 pillars of staying connected, I guess. And I call it CRAVE, CRAVE. So C is communication, having good communication skills, which means conflict skills also. R is rhythms that connect. A is appreciation, affirmation. V is creating vision together. So especially if they're working together, where are we going with this? What is our end goal? And really being clear about a long-term goal, say a 10-year goal, 5-year goals, 1-year goals, and not just for the business, but for the marriage also and your family. And then E is for energy, because entrepreneurs are famous for not having an off switch,
Right.
And so we have to protect our energy. We need to pay attention to it and protect it. So those 5 pillars, I think, for all couples, it's just a way of staying connected in a healthy way. And so that the rhythm, where that would apply to couples that work together, is what is your rhythm for starting the day? What is your rhythm for ending the day? What is your rhythm for taking off the hat that is business partner and putting on the one that is lover? I mean, it's hard to go from, working on a spreadsheet to suddenly you're expected to be sexy,
Right.
And so having that time to really focus on each other as people, you are more than an entrepreneur. You have interests, each person does. So yeah, those are some initial thoughts.
Yes, great tools. And I definitely for sure will put those in the show notes. So let's transition now to non-related business partnerships, because you said you've also, helped some people with relationship coaching, communication coaching in this regard. And the statistics are not great for partnerships. They tend to not survive long term. And usually from a tactical standpoint, a business coach or advisor will tell you that one of them has to have at least 51% ownership. One of the two has to be able to make the final decision.
Yep.
So a lot of these tools that you talk about that we can use in our marriages or in our husband-wife entrepreneurship duos, can they also apply to non-related business partners?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I have not mentioned the speaker listener tool, and we probably don't have time to unpack that whole tool. Again, if someone listening is interested, email me. You have my info at kathyrushing.com, and I'll send you I've written it up as a PDF, but the speaker listener tool is really an active listening tool, which is something I teach every couple I work with, but it absolutely applies to parents and teenagers or business partners, because we get so focused on trying to get our point across or make sure that we are heard that we don't really listen. And so when we talk about communication, a lot of times it is more about listening than speaking.
Oh boy, yeah. I'm not going to name names on the podcast, but I got about 5 people I'd love to send that tool to right now.
Yep, I've done it as, if you're on LinkedIn, you can come find me because I did a presentation on it. It's there as a live video, so you can also find it there, or just email me and I'll give some more information. But yes, partnerships are really tricky. And so you're talking about non-related.
Non-related,
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, because I hear too often people that have gone into business with a friend or some other family member, and they've not specified clear understanding. I find that with entrepreneurs. Most entrepreneurs that I've met are ready, fire, aim.
Yes.
They come back after the fact and go, gosh, I wish I'd known. That's my husband and I have such passion for sharing what we've learned, usually the hard way, to try to help other entrepreneurs, and especially those, who are married, not necessarily working together, but just here's some things to think about and questions to ask that will save you a lot of pain down the road.
Right. And I think, too, a lot of times what I see is unrealistic expectations. Mm-hmm. Especially entrepreneurs, like you said, they're, they aim last, they just fire, they go, they're energetic, right. They're going to save the world, solve all the problems. Yeah. And they feel that they're going to be at a certain level earlier than they achieve. And so then when that doesn't happen, this is where blame can come in. You see all the emotions that come up with it. Yes. And so I feel like expectations too, kind of managing that at the front end, like being realistic. How long is it going to take to really grow this business? Right. And how much do we really think we are going to take home and pay ourselves personally for the first few years? And, some of those hard strategic questions too need to come into play.
Yeah, so. I loved it when you and I visited, I don't know, it was last month or so, that I think you said that you primarily focus on people in their first 5 years of business.
Yes, yeah.
And that's so great because the statistics are not encouraging.
They're not, no.
I did a presentation last week and so kind of revisited the SBA statistics of businesses that fail. And it's actually in the first year, the stats have gone up from 18-something% to 22% in the first year. Will fail. Yeah. Yeah. And by 5 years, it's almost 50%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm very passionate about that. And one of the things I always say is, are they really failing or are they quitting? And a lot of times they're quitting because they don't have the right resources. Yep. They haven't managed cash flow or things like that properly. Right. And unrealistic expectations. They start to get down on themselves or, all of those things. But yes, it is important. And I would think with partnerships, it'd be curious to know if there's separate statistics for partnerships.
Yeah, I haven't. I honestly haven't dug into that a lot. And I've, met with a few business partners. The bulk of my work and awareness, I think, is more with how the intersection of business and marriage collide sometimes.
Yes.
Because it's just not talked about enough. And yet
No.
it is, there's a book by Meg, what's her middle name? Hirschberg, I think is her last name. Her husband started Stonyfield Farms, the organic yogurt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And she had a column in LinkedIn for several years writing about this very thing, the interplay, the overlap of family, marriage, and business. Of course, theirs was very messy because it was, they lived on a dairy farm, and she's like, I'm nursing a baby, and there's people coming through the room, needing to use the bathroom. But she talks about, there are lots of jobs that are stressful, but as an entrepreneur, it can become a toxic combination when your family's livelihood is tied to the success of the business. You can't ignore it.
You can't. And that leads me to what I wanted to ask you about as well. This past week, I was in a women in business meeting, and it was interesting how somebody had brought up, how do you handle when you're the entrepreneur and your spouse is not? Your spouse is either a stay-at-home dad or stay-at-home mom, or works corporate, works a job, and they just don't understand entrepreneurship. They just don't get what you're doing, and they really don't. It doesn't feel supportive. It can feel almost like I hate to say vindictive, or they want you to fail. It doesn't so much feel that heavy, but somebody had chimed in this conversation and said it could be jealousy. Your partner could be jealous of the fact that you actually took the initiative, had the courage, were able to take the risk and go do it. And then maybe they feel a little resentful of that because they feel they're, stuck or whatever. But it was a very powerful kind of conversation, because what was eye-opening for me is it's affecting more people than I realized. My husband's been my biggest cheerleader. He's never, ever said, oh, you need to go get a job or anything like that. But his first question always is, how much money did you make? And that's because his mindset comes from, he's in corporate. He gets a regular paycheck. He gets, it's very consistent. It's very predictable. It's, very nice.
He doesn't have overhead and payroll.
Right.
And
Yes. Yeah. I'm very thankful for it. Where with entrepreneurship, we don't have that luxury. We have the peaks and the valleys. So any thoughts on how do you, if you feel like your spouse isn't on board and you're already an entrepreneur, it's too late for the conversation. Should I do this? We're already there.
Yeah.
And I think back to a lot of times we jump into entrepreneurship not really knowing what we're getting into, or our spouse doesn't really understand what we're getting into. Where do you navigate that conversation? Where do you feel maybe are some thoughts on what's driving maybe that little bit of jealousy or that little bit of, just insecurities, I guess?
Yeah. Well, and probably every situation is a little bit different. So I wouldn't label what the other one is feeling. What I would first of all say, be curious. And when they have these conversations with their spouse, does that conversation tend to end with a period or a comma?
Ooh, good.
Is it a conversation that is open? Again, going back to the speaker-listener technique, and I teach it to everyone, because when the conversation ends with a period, like we've heard our partner say something, and we don't get curious and wonder about their perspective, it's not the same as ours. Well, hello, that's marriage.
Right.
On just about everything, right? It's part of what makes marriage interesting is we are not the same people. But so it's interesting, too, to think in terms of men versus women. You said this was a women's group, correct?
Yes, right.
So what you were hearing from was women. And there was a study I came across a couple of years ago about the study was asking, is there a difference between the way that men and women start businesses, become entrepreneurs?
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Men tended to start without consulting their partner. Women tended to want their partner's input, be mindful about, gosh, how is this going to impact our kids? What is this going to do for you? And I think some of that is just how we are wired as women. We tend to be more of the caregivers. Again, I don't want to fully, put everybody into boxes, but there's a lot that we know that just genetically, men and women are different. We can argue that all day long, but I'm going to stand on that. We are different.
That doesn't surprise me, that the way they would start a business, like what you're saying, doesn't surprise me.
Right.
I agree.
But the other thing about women is we are not very good at asking for what we need. And so that would be the other thing. I would be curious, if I were a fly on the wall in this conversation, to say, how do you approach your partner to ask for support? And saying things like, if they make a statement, for instance, like, I don't know, I don't like that you're doing this thing. Well, the first thing you're going to feel is defensiveness. But if you apply the speaker listener, which is basically when you're in the listener role, then you're mirroring. And that's just saying back. So you have some hesitation about me being in the business. And do you see what that does? That's a comma, not a period. It opens up to say, I'm listening. Tell me more. Another great phrase I find very helpful is, help me understand. Help me understand what it is that is causing you anxiety. We had this big entrepreneur conference in Fort Collins last week that I spoke at, and there was a friend of mine that I saw who came up to me because one of the presentations I did was it was called Roots of Resilience, the 3 key relationships necessary for a well-rounded entrepreneur. And I talk about the mentor, the spouse or partner, and a good friend, that we need something different from all 3 of these. So, but right now we're talking about the spouse or partner. And this woman came up to me afterwards and she said, my husband has 0 risk tolerance. He can't handle hearing the ups and downs. And so she said, I do feel kind of isolated. But she said, I've also accepted that that's where he is. That's who he is. And we connect on other levels. But when it comes to support for my business, she said, I feel kind of alone in it. But again, I think we can open that up for support if we can have some conversations that allow for both people to fully be seen and heard.
That is very, very powerful. Like, I just want to sit here and marinate on that for a little bit. No, that is really good. And you're right. We're talking about 2 different personalities, which earlier you said is good for a marriage. We're not looking to clone ourselves. And a lot of times that is probably what's driving it is, entrepreneurs who, most of us do have a high tolerance for risk, and our partner might not. So there might be some fear underlying there. Right. There's all these things. And, I think honestly, you and I could talk for hours, because I always say, we've got this well put together business plan, this growth roadmap, which is what I help people with. But there's a lot that comes down to mindset, that comes down to your support system, all those things that you are so important and what is going to help an entrepreneur get to that year 5 and above. So I thank you for just just piquing our curiosity and really sharing some really good nuggets, but also tools to help us go a little bit deeper into this. And I think, communication's huge. We know that with anybody, any relationship. And I feel like we allow distractions to get in the way. It's so easy to let your business become a distraction. Social, our phones, our digital world. And I really hope that listeners today take a moment, go get your tools, remove the distractions for 30 minutes, and just really touch base with what's going on with whether it's your spousal partner, your business partner, or your spouse who's just your non-business partner. So thank you, Kathy. What a great words of wisdom.
Well, I find it so important. And like you said, I'm beating this drum wherever I can, because I think we hold up people like, Steve Jobs. I have Apple everything. I am so grateful for his genius, brilliant mind and his ability to pull together tools that I use every day. But when he died, his family was a mess. People were cut off and disconnected, and I see it too often. I'm on LinkedIn a lot, and I see it a lot of young entrepreneurs, especially, who are still promoting this idea that you have to give up everything, basically, sacrifice everything for the sake of the business. And I vehemently disagree. And I think, whatever reasons you have started your own business, wherever you want to end up, you want to be able to celebrate it with someone at the end. And so if we don't take care of and nurture that relationship along the way, then it could be a very lonely, sad ending, when it doesn't have to be. But it means paying attention, having some tools, and doing a little bit of work. It's honestly, keeping a marriage together is not nearly as hard as a business, I feel like. But we do need tools, and that's what I'm passionate about, helping couples or individuals, have these tools and to have more of the life and love that they want.
Well, your passion is evident. It shines through, and your wisdom. And I just once again thank you for your time today. And I will make sure I put all these links in the show notes. And also, you can also reach out to Kathy on LinkedIn as well. So thank you so much, Kathy.
Thank you, Jennifer. It was a pleasure to be here.
At the end of the day, your business may be your passion, but your relationships are your foundation. And I think today we learned that success isn't just about sales and strategy. It's about support, communication, and boundaries. The more intentional we are about how we show up in our relationships, the stronger and more resilient we become in business. We leave space for more energy to build a business. So I hope you take the tools from Kathy today, use them, talk about them, find time for deeper connection, because thriving in business is so much better when you're thriving at home too. If you're a small business owner and your business is not giving you all that you desire, I invite you to learn more about my Earn More, Stress Less program. I help creative entrepreneurs with a 3-step program to help you increase revenue, improve profits, and pay yourself more. My clients experience double-digit growth. And in fact, if you click on the link below, it'll take you to a case study where I show you exactly how we get that done and how I helped a client increase her profit 193%. Until next time, thanks for listening. Keep building, and remember to support your local businesses. They need you more than ever.